million grant that they got that's only going to provide 25 jobs. 200 million that he got this company that donated 200,000 to his campaign over a period of time. That's only going to give 25 jobs. But where I'm going at, he was in Lansing. You don't get a plane and get to Washington, D.C. that fast. The plane schedule isn't that way out of here. We know that. So, but where I'm going at is he lied to 3 people that called into his office to check and see if he was there. We've got the phone numbers and documentation, so we can prove that if need be.
What is your goal? What do you think the issues are? I mean, everybody says jobs, jobs, jobs for Michigan. Is that still the big issue? And
you can't be narrowly focused. That's what happens. It's a bigger mantra. I look at 3 phases. We have economics, we have education, and we have environment. We need to bring jobs here. They've got to be green jobs, industrial-based jobs, and technological development. Why? Because that's what we do in Michigan. We create things and we build things for the rest of the world to share. We don't depend on China for our goods, and that's what we've been doing. Also, when I get there, there's 2 things that I'd like to do. One's repeal NAFTA, or at least sponsor a bill to repeal NAFTA or any other free trade agreement. Another one is to increase tariffs on imported goods into the United States. The Republicans want to talk currency manipulation. They've had 10 years to deal with it. Last 2 years, they haven't wanted to give a solution to anything. It's been a constant no, and we obviously don't know where their mindset is. But their constant talk lately has been about currency manipulation. Well, the first and foremost way you're going to deal with that is adjusting the tariffs the unfair tariffs that are with countries.
Well, the Democrats tried to do that on Saturday, and then the Chinese immediately responded by devaluing the renminbi even further. So that's a concern, because can we afford a trade war with China?
Sure we can.
How?
Bob Kuttner wrote about that in Huffington Post today and said, we're going to have one anyhow. They hold our debt, but we have to deal with it.
Last time I checked, if you didn't like your bank rates on your mortgage, you went and got a new one if you were able to, right?
One of the
It's a
things
yes or no.
If you're able, yeah.
If you're able. Well,
not many
it's
people
like
are
this.
anymore.
China does not control us. The Bush administration put us in a bad situation with China. It's time that this administration gets it back, and the only way it's going to happen is when we start sending people to Washington that are behind the people and not the corporations.
Well, you know, Kuttner argued that we should be buying our own debt. We did this in World War II with war bonds. There are people, I mean, certainly now people are willing to buy treasury bonds because they're safer perceived as the stock market. Maybe it's time to start buying our own debt back, just like corporations buy their stock back.
It's an alternative, and it's an idea. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I have a couple ideas, but it's going to take a collaboration. That's something Republicans don't know how to do, is collaborate. They haven't been willing to do it for 2 years, and I don't think they'll be able to do it if they're given control. All you're going to see is everything go back to the policies they were 2 years ago, if not farther back. And dealing with China, no, we got to stand up to them. Who are they?
Lance, you know, in the spring, Bill and I both went to 2 Tea Party events. We went to the April 15th tax day. There were far fewer people later on in the summer at their big tea 4th of July type rally. But it was interesting to me that Michigan had a fairly heavy both Tea Party presence and militia presence, but I'm not so sure that that isn't kind of running out of steam. What do they see in Mike Rogers? Because he's kind of the corporate candidate. He's not. There was no Tea Party insurgent against him. I was surprised.
I would say that I am seeing a lot of dissatisfaction with Mike Rogers all the way around. Doesn't matter where they're from. People realize that he is just a corporate money hound. His decisions aren't made in the best interest of the people. I mean, he's a gentleman he's wanted to beat the drum on 9/11, you know, like every Republican, 9/11, 9/11, patriotism. But yet when it comes down to helping out those volunteers, which some are from Michigan, to get the health care they need for the work they did at 9/11, recovery work, he voted against that. He doesn't care about people. He doesn't care about America. It's about the corporations and the benefit to the Republican establishment.
We're listening to WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan at LCC. Lance, one of the things that kind of concerns me is that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has been a bit disillusioned lately with President Obama. In particular, my big concern right now is that he seems to be just about ready to compromise away a lot of things related to Social Security with that bipartisan commission that includes Alan Simpson, who should have been kicked off long ago. What are your solutions? They keep saying, Ralph Nader, since I'm an old Naderite, keeps saying there really isn't any problem with Social Security other than that we cap Social Security at about $100,000, and if everybody paid the flat tax that's there, we wouldn't have any problem with Social Security. What are your ideas for specifics like Social Security?
Well, number one, we need to start talking about immigration to deal with Social Security. That's one way to deal with it.
Which is, what would your solution be to that?
Well, we've got to start looking at, immigration is a topic that people don't want to talk about, but we need to talk about it. And technically, you got a lot of people complaining about it. And I find it kind of ironic, unless they fall into that 2% of the population that can claim themselves to be Native American. If not, you're all from a form of immigration.
That would be me.
That would be that.
That would be
Congratulations, brother. So am I.
That would be me. But,
So am I.
but it didn't go well.
But you understand what I'm saying.
Everyone else is a tourist.
Well, now let's go this route. We'll take the native. We'll make this little argument here. You know as well as I do that Mexicans are ancestors of Incas, Aztec, and Mayans.
Of course, right.
So that would make them Native American. Why
Except
is
we're
it?
extremely territorial. We wouldn't want them here as Chippewas or a Chippewa.
Well, let's go even another
We kicked
step.
the Iroquois out of
border.
Michigan.
We moved the border.
Yeah.
We kicked the Sioux out of here too. We
Yeah.
moved them to the west.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different day discussion on
No,
the
I
history
know.
here. And we're keeping it on politics.
They're,
Bill.
they're
We're keeping it on
territorial.
politics.
They're very territorial.
Point is, what I'm trying to make is they're native to North America. Mexicans are native to North America. What we need to do is, for immigration, we need to look at all these visas that are coming in and there's so many things we have to look at. To discuss right now would be too long, but for the Social Security aspect, it'll never be privatized. Never. I mean, it's a football.
And it never should be.
Well, no. You're exactly right. I mean, I just want people that are bantering about Social Security. I just want to ask them how their 401ks are doing.
Yeah.
Mine's doing just fine because I took my money out about 2 months beforehand.
Very smart individual.
But not everybody is as aware
No,
as you are.
exactly. But immigration's a key step to that. Why? Now you start getting these people legal on the books. They're paying into the system. That way, we've got a younger generation paying for the older generation. We take care of our own in this country. I was raised in America. We take care of our own.
Why didn't we get the DREAM Act through here? We have a majority in Congress. We had the DREAM Act. I'm really disappointed.
Did you read my Huffington Post article 2 weeks ago?
No, I missed it. I'm sorry.
I was on the Sunday front page.
Oh, great.
I'll tell you why. The House has passed 330 bills. Pelosi's gotten bills through. It's in the Senate.
Well, that's true.
And I'm not saying it's our senators, because I know our senators are voting right and trying to get it through. And I'm talking about Senator Levin and Senator Stabenow. You've got a few dinos in the Senate.
Yes, you do.
And the problem is that takes out that 60 majority.
But wouldn't you like to see them on their mattresses force the Republicans into actually doing the filibuster?
Well, you know what? I would, but you ask what the problem is. We're trying to tell you the problem. You don't have a solid Democratic base in the Senate. And the problem is, not to mention, we got an election year on. How many of these people are constant on getting campaign funds? So
but
they're
it
gonna.
doesn't take a solid base to force a filibuster. They
No.
could force the filibuster. They just are gutless.
But
Even
we're
the
going
ones
back.
that are on our side.
Take out the filibuster. Let's just look at the votes. We've got 330 pieces of legislation waiting for the Senate to pass. Why aren't they passing them? Because of special interest controlling the vote.
And it's election year.
And it's election year.
Well, but they had plenty of chances to do things like EFCA and pay back the unions for all the support that they gave them, and they didn't do
You're
it.
getting an argument out of me.
Don't ask, don't tell has languished.
You
We're
are
still
getting-
busy rendering people and torturing them in various
Hey,
places. You know,
you're
this
talking-
whole terror alert in
Let's
Europe
go.
is because they caught the one guy and
Easy
he's
way
in
to say it.
Bagram.
I'm against the war. I'm demanding that the 50,000 in Iraq be pulled.
Ah,
You're getting into other areas.
30,000 in Afghanistan? Oh.
I want them all gone. Why are we? If we have such a border problem, why aren't our troops protecting our physical border versus creating a quagmire somewhere that they don't need to be?
Ah, so you're in the Alan Grayson mode.
Yeah. Troops at the border.
If you pay attention to the blogosphere, I'm equated to being far more progressive than Alan Grayson.
Wow.
The bloggers equate me to Alan Grayson with the Darth Vader voice. What they have said is, if I'm elected, I will become the most dangerous man in Washington. Why? This seat's going to be gone in 2 years. It's going to be redistricted.
That's right.
I'm not taking PAC or special interest money.
Oh.
My vote is not bought or sold. My vote is made by the conscience of the people of the 8th
And
Congressional
you kind of
District.
have Jesse Ventura's haircut. So
Hey,
maybe you're
you
one of those
never
insurgents.
know.
Yeah.
Never know, right?
You never know. Ah. Well, so what are your other stops coming up? You can't get your opponent to debate, so what?
We're
I
gonna
know the
what we're
8th district
probably
is
gonna
a-
do is we're gonna probably hold 5 town hall meetings, mock debates. We'll probably put a blank suit up in a chair.
Empty suit.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what we have right
Maybe
now.
you could get Michael Moore and stalk him.
You know, what it amounts to, that's one of the things. But basically, what it is I've got about 30 days left. 31. They're all bleeding in together here. I got to think.
It's
30.
It's October
29.
2nd, so it's
29.
probably 9. Probably 29.
29.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that means that we're going to be hitting a lot of doors, hitting a lot of dinners, a lot of football games, getting into the community. There's still a lot of events that are going on. I've got union meetings as far as, their get out the vote type meetings. Basically, it's just getting out there,
I
meeting
hope
the
your
people.
strategies are better than mine. I used to talk in high schools, of course, where most of the people couldn't vote. They weren't old enough yet, and including high schools out of my district.
Yeah.
You know, that's a
You probably have a slightly better campaign.
Well, I've done this before. High schools aren't ruled out, and the reason being is you do have to hit that senior government class. Excuse me.
Yes, you do.
and they
First
talk
vote.
to their parents.
There you go.
A lot of
There
kids
you
come
go.
home and talk to parents.
We've got to
Um,
energize that other side of the base, yes.
What it amounts to is I've been doing a lot of talks in college classes here and on campus. Been talking to, like I said, the unions, people on the street, anybody I come into contact with, let them know what's going on. Or, believe it or not, I've been starting to get that, hey, aren't you that guy? And it's like, maybe. Which guy are you talking about?
Well, I hope you have enough time to do all the things you want to do before Election Day hits, because it sounds like you've got a full schedule.
I need about 5 more hours in the day and 2 more of me, and I'd have it covered.
Well, that's true.
But it's worth it. I'm having the time of my life. I'm actually living the dream. I mean, like I said, I'm not the establishment candidate, and it feels really good to actually be able to hear from people that, wow, you're actually saying the things that I've wanted my politicians to say. And I look at them, I go, that's good, because I'm not a politician. I'm a teacher, I'm a citizen, I'm a parent, and I'm a grandparent.
And where do you teach?
I'm a laid-off teacher.
Okay, laid off.
I'm finishing up my master's right now as we speak at Michigan State. I'm finishing up a dual master's in special ed to bank on my endorsement, my social studies endorsement. That'll give me a certification in LD and EI, because I'm a teacher. But I fell into this. It's my duty to do this. I mean, either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Nobody else was stepping forward, and I wasn't going to let Mike Rogers have a free ride. The people of the 8th District of Michigan and in the United States deserve so much better than that, and especially what we've gotten over the last 10 years. We need better.
Congratulations for stepping up to the plate, because we need people who have that kind of civic engagement, getting involved in the process. I mean, it's important for the process to go forward. And thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Bonnie,
you
for
very
having me
much,
down. Thanks.
yeah.
Appreciate it. We'll have that Ojibwa conversation one of these days.
Thank you.
Thank you very
But
much.
maybe we could get a casino running, right?
Hey. I don't want to go there.
A bankrupt casino.
A
Can you
bankrupt
imagine
casino.
that?
Ooh.
Sue Tribe?
Yes, Sue
Really?
Tribe.
Your brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had to go down to Lansing to find one.
Yeah.
Thank you,
so
buddy. I
much.
appreciate
Good
it.
to see you. You're listening to Lansing Online News Radio, WLNZ 89.7. I'm going to ask our two guests to buddy up on one microphone so we can see
That
you
one
on our
mic's a little-
webcast.
Yep.
And also
Move over
because
just a
that's
little.
the good mic. So we will keep you on that one microphone there. We are joined right now by Sarah Musa. If you will wave to our audience. Sarah, there you are. And the radio audience is baffled, of course. And Callista Ransom. And you're both from the Islamic Center here in East Lansing. And are you students as well?
Yeah, actually, I'm a sophomore at Michigan State.
What's your major?
Physiology at Lyman Briggs.
Oh, okay, excellent.
I'm actually an assistant professor at Michigan State University. I work in the Institute of International Agriculture.
Oh, interesting.
Do you both live in East Lansing or the area?
I live in Lansing.
Lansing, okay.
Yeah, I live in East Lansing.
Good to see you. There has been so much concern, and you've been part of that movement, that the Islamic Center is really trying to do an outreach to the community now to let people know. I attended the open house that you held last year, prior to some of the difficulties. And I thought that was a wonderful opportunity. It seemed to get good attendance. How do you feel the climate is right now in the community based on what's been happening these past few weeks with that pastor who was into burning the Koran and the complications with the Koran incident outside the Islamic Center? Was that an indication that things are souring here in the community, or was that an aberration?
Actually, I think like the person who did the act of burning the Quran, they really did not expect the outpouring of support from community members. Like, it really shows that our community is really open to like the Islamic Center, and it actually really reaffirms the fact that the community
Supports?
so yeah, supports the Islamic Center. And actually, if you come to the Islamic Center, hung up on the door is like the different letters and flowers that we've received. So like, it really shows that despite the fact that this person wanted to like, maybe, I don't know.
Were they trying? Do we really know what the motivation was in that case, or not really?
Actually, I really don't know.
I don't think it was ever revealed, or obviously the person was never revealed, although they knew.
Right, and there was no prosecution
No.
involved.
No.
But
Which,
I know,
you know, which was, no matter what, was probably good. Because
yeah.
the healing was already taking place, and the support was really good.
I saw a news release today that there is a Quran on display at the MSU library in the
Right.
first floor. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I haven't been over there to
Haven't
see
been to
it.
see it yet?
No, but I just received notice that that there was this display there too, and I'd like to go see it. So that was a nice surprise, actually.
Yeah, 6th century, I believe,
Mhm.
a page from a 6th century document. So it's going to be interesting to see that. I didn't know we had one in the community. So that's
It's in the MSU archives.
so they brought
Excuse
it
me,
up.
the library archives,
Yeah.
not the general archives.
So what kinds of activities do you do at the center to try to engage the broader community? In addition to the open house, what can people come and learn more? How can they find out more about Islam? Because I think, as you've indicated, ignorance is part of the problem. People don't understand the religion. They don't understand the variety of views in the culture. What opportunities are there to learn more at the center?
Well, actually, one thing that the Islamic Center is doing is actually in collaboration with CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, is they're doing rather than burning the Quran,
It's called Learn, Don't Burn.
Learn, Don't Burn, where you can request a Quran, or you, like, by email or phone call, or you can stop in the Islamic Center and you can ask to have a copy of the translation of the Quran, and rather than burning it, or rather than not knowing what's in it, you read it first, and then you decide, whether or not you...
I've always been interested. There are various versions of the Bible, King James Version and modernized versions and different versions. Are there also different versions of the Quran where you might see one translation differ from another, or is it a unified text?
There's only one Quran, which exists in Arabic, and there are various translators. And you can compare them side by side. The translations really don't have different meanings. It's pretty consistent across translations, I would say. Would you agree?
Yeah.
You know, I talked with someone today, a very good friend, and she lives in southwest Michigan, and in a rural community, and she says the attitudes in the rural community are very much anti, and she said the vehemence of it is really surprising to her. I mean, we may be here in East Lansing and Lansing on the other side of that, but I think in some of the very rural areas of Michigan, there's some general distrust and even hate, frankly. And I mean, what do you think? First, I guess, causes that. I mean, the most obvious reason, but the less than obvious ones, because we're beyond 9/11 to some extent, and this has gone into a different direction. Do you have any ideas of what's going on out there? I personally am confused about it. I mean, I don't know why there is such a...
I think one thing is obviously lack of interaction with the Muslim community. So people who are living in rural communities probably don't, maybe have never even interacted with a Muslim before. So all they get about Muslims is what they see on TV or what obviously what they hear from different media outlets. So that's one.
There is a level of isolation in some of Michigan's rural areas. I know that in talking with people there, the same thing holds true with African Americans, and there's a lot of bias there, unfortunately, and it's based on lack of exposure. It's very difficult, I would think, to have that kind of outreach. But in Michigan, we benefit from having one of the largest Muslim communities of any state, don't we? I mean, with the community in Dearborn, so it would seem there would be more opportunities for people to learn. I know that we've had, too, on campus, we've done periodic things at the College of Communication Arts and Sciences, where when you celebrate Eid,
Eid.
I was never sure how it was pronounced. But we've had representatives from the center come in and explain the holidays and explain things. I think many of our students are quite interested in the Muslim faith and want to learn more. What are good places for them to learn? Should they look online? Should they look to the Islamic Center? What are good resources for young people to learn more? Student groups on campus?
Well, you're a student, so maybe you can address that.
I can speak to the MSU campus. I'm not sure so much about the LCC campus, but there is the Muslim Students Association on campus, and they do hold events maybe like once a month where they welcome non-Muslims to come and interact with other Muslims and maybe learn more about like the Islam, obviously, and like they do Islam Awareness Month, where for 4 times during the month, once every week, they host an event. So maybe something about women's rights, misconceptions in Islam, and like different controversial issues that people might not know so much about.
One of the biggest changes that I've seen over the decades in the Muslim community here has been the change in women's dress, to be honest about it. I mean, I was looking through photographs a few months ago from Baghdad where in the 60s women in Baghdad were wearing miniskirts. And it doesn't seem that miniskirts would go very well in Baghdad now. I mean, it seems there's been a sort of backlash against modernity or modern dress for women, and the increasing numbers of women wearing the hijab, covering their hair. Am I right or wrong in the fact that that's a fairly recent cultural phenomenon?
I think that would depend on the particular context of the country and the political environment that it's in at that particular time. You see the same sort of thing happening in Iran and other places, Lebanon. I can think of some examples where, it kind of goes in and out of, people becoming, starting to cover more or starting to cover less. And I think, we can't really talk about the political situations in other countries because we don't really know all the ramifications and why exactly people are doing this or doing that.
It seems more common now in the United States than it might have been a decade or so ago. Is that correct? Because
women
we have
to cover themselves?
Yes, to cover their hair in particular. Did your parents?
I'm a convert, actually.
Ah.
I wasn't born a Muslim, so I've been Muslim about 11 years, and I've always covered. So I don't really know. Maybe you can address. Have you seen a change?
Maybe more immigrants coming to the United States, but I don't really.
It's very interesting to women in our culture to try to understand that, because we look at the burqa in Afghanistan and we view that as a sign of repression. So we don't know where the line is between an attempt to be modest and covering your hair and something like the burqa, which seems so restrictive and seems so difficult. I mean, when you look at that, it would be almost impossible to drive or run or do anything in that kind of garment. It seems designed to try to restrict a woman's freedom. We have a young woman who's an engineer normally that's here, and she's planning on doing a documentary asking Muslim American women how they make the decision about wearing the hijab or not. Maybe, from your perspective, we're too focused on that as an issue, but we would love to know more about how you come to the decision as to how to dress.
It's basically up to the woman how she wants to dress. It's it's commanded for us to cover everything but our hands and our face, and how we choose to do that is cultural expression. But it's really up to the individual woman, and she does it out of love, because she wants to follow what God has told her to do. And you see examples of that in other faiths as well. I mean, you see nuns wearing a habit.
Yeah.
So for us, it's kind of like a non-issue, and we're just baffled by the focus. I mean, when you have Catholic nuns that dress just the same as Muslim women, and yet it's like so much focus on a Muslim woman.
Although most of those nuns have given that up. That's been a source of...
Maybe not in other countries, though.
Well, that's
Yeah,
probably
not
true.
in other countries.
Yeah, maybe just in the U.S. It's
We
very
were talking
common.
with Kathy Zaitun about this issue when she was here visiting, and she said that it had much more to do with culture from her perspective than it did with the religion, because the religious precepts are the same in all countries, but how they interpret it in different cultures is very different.
Did either of you attend any of the Zaytun or the Dave Edgar's events?
No,
I
I
was just
didn't.
curious. Okay.
Have you been personally discriminated against in any way for being Muslim? Has that been a source of concern? Do you feel less safe now in the community than you did before as a result of some of these recent activities?
I was raised in the East Lansing community, and it's always been a very open community. Like, I went to East Lansing High School, I went to McDonald Middle School, and elementary school before that, all within the East Lansing community. And it's because of the fact that MSU, so there are a lot of like students that come, international students. So it's very diverse. So I've never actually felt like anybody has had any sort of
Ill will?
towards me.
Good.
Bonnie, one of the things I'm sure is happening is students are coming from all over Michigan and around the United States. This may be the first experience of them ever meeting a Muslim or a Muslim woman. I mean, it's got to be.
Sure, especially from rural areas
Absolutely.
as well. Now
The likelihood of running across Muslim is pretty slim. I mean, except in some of our more urban areas.
Is there a message you'd like to leave with the community about how they can learn more and how changes you'd like to see?
Well, our doors are always open at the Islamic Center. Anytime anybody wants to come in, I've done several talks in churches and to other groups, and we're more than happy to share. We're very welcoming. Don't be afraid of us. If you want to come on in, we like people. And we're just like everybody else, I would say. Do you have anything you want to say?
Basically.
I had a wonderful time when I visited at the open house, and I loved the henna on the hands. There's all sorts of wonderful cultural traditions that I would love to learn more about, so I'll be back with my video camera again.
Wonderful.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to
Study
Calista
hard.
Ransom and Sarah Musa and teach hard. We're going to be joined now, and you get to see me for the first time in any webcast. I've always tried to avoid having the camera be put on me.
We can't do anything because I got a hangnail I wanted to chew. You can usually do that on the radio. Now, it looks real stupid in the video.
We are joined by the bodiless but still in full voice Todd Haywood from Michigan Messenger. And for security reasons, he has decided that he will not be webcast this evening, and also he has this new beard that I think is...
Just gave away the secret.
Gave away the secret.
I gave Todd a little thing here that the Neil Shine Ethics Lecture is focusing on sports journalism. What a coincidence. Do you think that topic will be brought up?
I think it might be. I think we might hear a little bit about that at that specific conversation.
Back up and tell them what we're talking about.
Todd is the person who broke the story about two basketball players at Michigan State University who have been accused by a woman in the community of an sexual assault at Wonders Hall. She went to the police and she talked with the prosecutor's office, and there's a dispute related to whether she did or did not agree with the prosecutor's decision not to prosecute. And Todd decided that was a story that the community needed to know about, even though the identity of not only the victim, but also in this case the players, is not being revealed because of concerns that you don't do that unless charges are filed.
Absolutely. And I want to be clear, too, that this was a decision that was made by the entire editorial staff of Michigan Messenger. This just wasn't me saying this is a story. This was all of us talking, saying, hey, we think this is a story and this is a discussion point for us.
Well, yeah, and this I think is interesting. Michigan Messenger it is a story, but there's only been one other really news outlet in the state. I think Grand Rapids Press has, has covered. I mean, really covered it the way you did. Is that sort of accurate? I mean,
State News did.
The state news has covered it. Also, the Fox channel of Grand Rapids covered it, as did WLNS, Channel 6 here in Lansing. I mean, some folks have covered it, and it's a difficult issue. I mean, it's uncomfortable. Not only is it uncomfortable topic information, but it's also uncomfortable because it raises the questions about when do you identify people, how do you identify people, and that sort of stuff. Because in this situation, I mean, an allegation of sexual assault is a massive, massive thing in this community. And so naming somebody,
it's a felony. It's a big deal.
well, and naming somebody who's been accused of that but has not been charged is unfair to them.
Yeah.
And obviously, naming a victim in a sexual assault case or any other crime situation, I think, unless they say, yes, you can use my name, that's unfair to them as well.
I was surprised that the initial reaction focused so much on you must be a U of M fan. I mean, it seemed to me that it was interpreted through a prism of sports rather than through a prism of sexual assault and the fact that a crime may have been committed, or if not a crime, certainly a situation that we don't want to see repeated.
Sure, and that certainly surprised me as well, but I'm also not big into sports, so in fact, when I got the telephone call or the text informing me that these allegations had been leveled, I had to call my editor, Ed, who's a huge MSU basketball fan, and say, who are these guys? So I had no clue who they were when I got the information. Which is interesting that somebody would presume that somehow I'm into sports. I think it's a gender expectation, and I think we're seeing a lot of gender role stuff playing out in the conversations and the comments that we're seeing online.
Where are we now with the story and with the situation? Apparently you told me earlier that the prosecutor has released the victim statement in addition to having released the police report. And so is that in preference, why and what happens next? Are they reevaluating the position on prosecuting?
I think what I'm seeing is Prosecutor Dunnings is digging his feet in. He's saying there's no crime. We have asked former prosecutors and defense attorneys and sexual assault advocates to review the police reports and the transcripts of the statement from the player and a transcript from the victim and give us their opinion. And we'll be working on a story about that that'll be coming out in the next 24 hours, I'm hoping. The victim statement was just released this afternoon.
Is there a preponderance of opinion on the part of those experts you've talked with so far as to whether they think there is a crime here or not?
What I'm hearing is that most people think that there's probable cause to make an arrest and proceed with a preliminary hearing.
A preliminary hearing leading to, you wouldn't host a preliminary hearing if you didn't intend to go to trial, so there would be a trial.
That's what the police believe too, is that not correct?
That is absolutely.
Because they asked for.
Correct, and there's been a whole lot of argument from Prosecutor Dunnings that when police present a police report, that they're not actually making a recommendation. Everybody that we've spoken to a bunch of police experts on this, has said when the police department identifies we believe X crime was committed,
it's pretty clear.
That's making a recommendation for a prosecution under X crime.
You know, one of the things you did too in Michigan, you published the report, which gave people, other than the redacted material, which you could read through, I think it's probably the first time a lot of people had ever seen a police report.
I think that may be. And
they found it of great interest, frankly. It was very detailed.
I love the fact that an online publication can use something like DocStock or Scribd to embed the actual document in the website. People get a chance to see original documents. They don't have to rely on a person's interpretation of it. They can do both. They can see your analysis, and they can also see the document itself. So has this been a difficult story to report?
It has been incredibly difficult because there are so many emotions on all sides of it. And so, my job is to come in and be as objective as humanly possible. And that's difficult when you have high emotions from both sides coming at you. And we have consistently said, we don't know if a crime was committed. We're not experts on that. What we're doing is presenting information to the public for hopefully an important conversation. And I think that important conversation is the context of what constitutes consent, what constitutes sexual assault. And there's a real perception out there that sexual assault is only the rape scenario where the stranger jumps out from behind a bush with a gun and sexually assaults somebody. But the vast majority of sexual assaults are perpetrated by somebody that the victim knows.
1 out of every 4 college women will be the victim of sexual assault at some time during their college career. As we know, it's by far one of the least reported crimes.
Correct.
Women, I'll be honest about it, I was former executive director of the Michigan Victim Alliance, and I was part of the MSU Sexual Task Force. I hold a somewhat outlier position that it is the conflating of stranger danger sexual assault with murkier situations that I don't think serves anyone well. I know most sexual assault professionals in the field want to make sure that the penalties are equally as harsh for both, feeling that that will be a deterrent. My suspicion, however, is that it makes women even less likely to report the crime, and I wish we had more ways of informal social control to try to deal with these. Let women know who are the individuals that we should be warned about in the community, have informal networks to be able to deal with these issues, because I think many women really balk at the idea of sending somebody to prison for a number of years, even though they feel they've been victimized, because they feel that that may be disproportionate.
Well, I think that that's certainly a conversation that needs to happen, but I also think that there's a conversation here about gender that needs to happen. Vast majority of men have weighed in with this concept that somehow this woman wanted this to happen.
Well, that's another problem,
And
yes, indeed.
I think that it shows that we have a lot of work to do as a community
Yes.
to have discussions about sexual assault. And I think until as a community we've arrived at sort of a consensus about what's acceptable and unacceptable, we're going to continue to run into situations where we're going to blame the victim or we're going to blame the perpetrator.
One of the things, this is a little bit cart before the horse, but say for example there's no criminal charges. The next steps, of course, that you'll be reporting on is what does Tom Izzo do? What's the university do? Because there were some borders crossed that a coach is not going to want to deal with. I mean, he's going to have to deal with, frankly, but he probably doesn't want to deal with them. Have you heard anything? They're locked up, aren't they?
We have gotten some response from them, and you'll have to, again, I'm sorry, I can't get more in depth, but we have gotten some public statements, and we are working on a story following up on that. And I think what's most interesting is that they have lockdown. I mean, people who normally would return my phone calls are emailing me and saying, "I'm sorry, you need to talk to University Relations." I've never had that situation.
This is a big controlled. Probably the biggest control I've ever seen on media coming out of MSU. They are lockstep about not talking about it unless there's absolute approval. And it's going to get real interesting down the road. No matter what happens, it's going to get real. My spouse brought up the point of there's 3 other incoming freshmen say we don't know who they are. Are they going to wear T-shirts that say "not me"? I mean, I wouldn't want to be painted with that, whether it's criminal or not.
Well, I want to clarify that we never identified them as
I
freshmen.
know you haven't.
So I'm not going to verify yes or no if they're freshmen.
What I think this has also highlighted from my perspective, looking at the journalistic role, is that news organizations have for so long not covered things like these that are hot topics of conversation in the community. The blogosphere and online publications have said, wait a minute, if everybody's talking about it, there must be some way we can have an online conversation about this. Do you feel you've struck the right balance here by bringing an important issue to the forefront online, giving people a chance to comment, sparking this conversation?
I think so, and I think if you go and look at our comments, very few of them have been deleted. I'm called everything from a U of M fan to somebody who's worse than a National Enquirer or tabloid reporter. And Ed Brayton is attacked the same way. But there are also, in those contexts, there are also some really important conversations starting to happen where people are really asking each other real questions. That's part of the process, I think. Are we where I would like to see it as a conversation? Absolutely not. And I think as we come forward, we're going to start seeing more of those conversations.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next. Have you seen any? There's been a demonstration on campus. Are there more
Very
scheduled?
peaceful.
Yeah,
Actually, it was a demonstration that actually occurred at the prosecutor's office.
Prosecutors. Okay. So are there others going to be ongoing? Have you heard any of that coming out from the women on campus?
I think that there is. I think there's a lot of pressure that's coming out at this point, and I think what we're looking at is there's a perception right now that Mr. Dunnings is unwilling to prosecute sexual assault. Now, the Uniform Code reports on crime don't support that contention. However, what those don't show is that there are hundreds of cases of sexual assault that the sexual assault networks are aware of that never get reported to law enforcement. So we're going to be looking at some of those issues as well.
One of my concerns has always been that women who do go to the authorities very rapidly do find out that it is not a system that is likely to make them feel better. It's very difficult to win a conviction in a case like this. It's going to be standard procedure that women are run through the ringer and their personal life is held up for ridicule and comment. And so I can certainly understand why women are reluctant to enter into that system, and that's why I'm so interested in seeing if there are things like this that can happen, that we can have conversations about how do we change these attitudes on the part of men, especially I think sometimes men in group get a certain mob psychology, or maybe the anonymity of commenting on a website lets this loose. But really unpleasant stuff that you say, this doesn't really belong in our community, this isn't the way men should be raised to treat women. How do we make that conversation go forward?
I think we make that conversation go forward by talking to the expert in sexual assault.
And reporting it.
And continuing to talk about it. It can't be the silent, hidden epidemic that it currently is. And that's part of the problem, too, is we just don't talk about sexual assault in this community.
You know, Bonnie, this is interesting. I'm working on a story long-term on... I better go then. We'll talk about this later. I'm going to go start doing some engineering.
Bill Castanera is our engineer tonight. We're busy doing double duty here on all sorts of things. So new story coming out when?
We're hoping to have something tomorrow, but again, the prosecutor just released the transcript from the victim statement, so we had to go back to our experts and ask them to reevaluate the information.
In fact, Todd wouldn't be here tonight if he'd have been able to reach me, because he'd be home typing and getting that story ready for you. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody again next week. Lansing Online News Radio, 89.7 WLNZ here in Lansing, Michigan. Thank you. Tune in next week. We have yet another expert, Dr. Mujib Hourani is coming in from Michigan State University to continue our conversation on the Islamic religion and culture. Do I need to run out to the other room and make sure that we're really...
It sounds like we're off.
Good.